That Millwall podcast. Today we have a Who Are You? And it's quite a special Who Are You this today, actually, because we've got the last one of the 22-23 season, and we're joined by the latest That Millwall podcast panelist, Dan. Dan, how are you?
Yeah. Still in a state of shock, I think, after the unfortunate events of Monday. But at least we have 2-3 months before we've got to get over it and go all over again.
Yeah, and obviously for the benefit of the listeners, we're recording this a couple of days after the Blackburn fixture. We're not going to try and dwell too much on that. There's a lot of other stuff that's going out on the channel, but as I say, yeah, we're still in shock that the pair of us have obviously after the damaging defeat. But today, this is a show all about Dan. It's usually an opportunity for us to get to know our listeners, but we're getting to know our new panelists today. So you'll be seeing a lot more of Dan next season, obviously over the summer as well with transfer news. So it's great to have him on board. But Dan, if you want to just kick us off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I work in the media industry, so I'm a little bit familiar with podcasts and stuff. I've done a bit of radio work in particular in my time in the last few years, and I've been a Millwall season ticket holder, I think, since the 2009-10 season. I'm only 21, so I missed out unfortunately on all the fun times of the old then. But we've had some good ones in the new then. So
Absolutely, and I think obviously a little bit younger than myself, but I would imagine that lots of people who are a similar age, it's quite interesting because you've probably been supporting the club at a time, at one of the most successful times in the club's history. So you come along at the right time. You get rid of some of the older dross memories and come towards some better times. But you obviously said you've been supporting Millwall or season ticket holder since 2009. Why Millwall?
Well, it's quite interesting because I've got one half of my family is my dad's family. They have roots in South London, Bermondsey. My nan used to work in the biscuit factory in Bermondsey, and they all live like in Orpington, that sort of area. So still like South London, bit more Kent, but still South London. And then my mum's side of the family, they're all from like Stepney, Limehouse, East London. So they're all West Ham
Ooh.
fans. So it's kind of like, yeah, it was an interesting one. So I had the decision to make. So no, but yeah, my dad got me into the Millwall game first, and I've loved it, and I've never really looked
Yeah,
back.
it's just to say sorry to your mum's side of the family, but obviously you
Yeah,
chose the right way to go. In the end,
of course.
I'm sure, I would imagine as well, it'd be quite difficult either for your mum or your dad because it's not like they support teams that are just they're just different football teams. They're big rivals, so you had to go one
Yeah.
way or the other. But as I say, you chose well. In terms of your first game, I obviously off camera we previously spoke that I think you was possibly too young to remember the cup final back in 2004. But what was your first memory of a game?
So my first game I remember was Cheltenham at home in 2008. I was still a bit of a pain back then. I didn't get a season ticket that season. I was feeling I was more interested in watching other stuff like outside the ground, like the trains and stuff. I was just always struggled to pay attention to the football when I went at first. But no, I do remember that was the first game I went to. We won 2-0. It was a Gary Alexander penalty, and then Dave Martin scored the second goal. And then I came to the next home game, which is MK Dons at home, and we lost 4-0 on that game. So that was very much a welcome to Millwall, I think.
Yeah,
So
the
yeah,
bipolar Millwall hit you early. First
yeah,
game win, second game defeat. I think in that MK, if it's the game I'm thinking of, I think Paul Robinson scored an own goal. At
yeah. I've got that season review on DVD, and it's a proper comical own goal,
It
that one.
is. Funny enough, I was talking. I went to the awards the other night, and Robbo was there, and didn't mention it to him. Didn't want to dampen the mood too much. But as we left sort of his table, I was saying to a couple of the other guys, I think he scored one of the worst own goals, and it was actually. So your second game was actually that.
Yeah, it was that one. Yeah, I think me and my dad left at 3-0 to my dad. I think I was being a pain and we was losing. My dad was like, "Let's not bother sticking around." I remember we got back to the station, South Birmingham, and someone was like, "It's 4-0 now."
Oh yeah,
He's like, "Great." So we made the right decision. We made the right decision to leave. So yeah, that was the first season where I kind of started dipping my toe in, and then we had Scunthorpe at the end of that season at Wembley. And obviously we'd had Leeds in the playoffs, but by the time I think we had that Leeds game, I'd calmed down a little bit, and I was hooked. And since then, I've never really looked back.
And in terms of your sort of experiences, obviously starting with a win helps. I think most kids, or even if you're an adult, I suppose, when you go to your first game, you do still remember things. Do you remember the sort of atmosphere? What were your sort of first impressions of the ground and the Den?
Oh well, I think I was. I mean, I'd seen it a million times because I live in Kent, so I'd go up and down a lot on the
Mhm.
train. I still have family in London. My dad used to work in London, so I'd go up and with my mum and see my family and stuff. So I'd always gone past the Den loads of times on the train. And but then to actually be outside, I think I was like in a little bit of shock at like how big it actually was. I don't think you actually get a sense when you go past it a million times, like actually how big it is. I always remember as well stepping like doing the little walk down. I sit in block 46, so doing that little walk like out, and you see the
Mhm.
pitch, and I think that was the time where I was really starting to get into my football. Started playing not that long as well, like before that. So I was, yeah, it was quite a special moment to be there, and I didn't realise how much my dad actually went up until that point, until he actually started taking me along all the time.
And that leads me on quite nicely. It's almost as if we've rehearsed this, but I was going to ask you. Obviously, you said they're block 46. Are you still? Do you still? Is that where you still see it? Have you ever moved, or is that home?
If Block 46 has been open, I've pretty much always sat there. There's been a very few times where I've sat upstairs when I was quite a bit younger, when me and my dad, there was another boy who went to my school who supported Millwall. They lived just around the corner from us, so sometimes we'd go and sit in the upper dockers with them. But pretty much, if Block 46 is open and I'm at the game, I don't see any reason for me to change. I've sat in the Barry Kitchener a couple of times when the Dockers has been closed for cup games, but it just doesn't feel the same to me.
No, it's funny really because I started in the lower tier in the Coldblow Lane. Now I sit in the upper tier, and I would never. I don't think. Obviously, the cup games you've got no choice, as you say. If they don't open up the stand, you have to sit somewhere else. But given the choice, it's just it. My seat feels like my seat. It's home, and I imagine obviously that's the same for you. And
Yeah,
I'm assuming your dad has always sat in that block as well.
yes, he sat there since the new den as it is now. My whole family have sat there. We go. My granddad doesn't go as much now, but I mean he's 87 or 88, so he's seen plenty of Millwall over his lifetime. He's had a good crack, and then there's me, my dad, and my two cousins who are a bit older. So yeah, but we've always sat there.
And what are your impressions and or thoughts now of the ground? I mean, I'm actually a believer. I hate it being called the new Den. It's now 30 years. It's the Den to me, and
Yeah.
because I was just missed the old Den bracket, unfortunately. So I've only ever known the Den as it is today. What are your thoughts of the ground today?
Well, yeah, I'm with you. Like to me, it's the den. It's not the new den. I mean, I think it doesn't help me as well. The fact I miss the old den as it
Mhm.
was. But I think even when I go to away games, there's so few grounds that you go to that you're so close to the pitch for second tier football. So I think that really, when we look back at them kind of Millwall atmospheres, I won't mention a few games, so we'll come on to a few of them later. But when I think back to like the proper Millwall atmospheres I've been at, it's the closeness of the
Mhm.
ground that keeps it like that hostile and keeps the atmosphere here. And unlike these kind of like soulless bowls, like West Ham's, like Readings, you struggle to get an atmosphere going in them kind of grounds. So yeah, and I know they've mentioned expansion a few times. I don't think now's the right time. I'm sure there will probably be a point, possibly in the next 10 years, maybe a little bit longer, where they do have to expand, but I don't think right now is the right time for expansion.
And in what sense?
I just think that we have had some very good home crowds this
Mhm.
season, but we haven't. I think we have to be like consistently on the sellout for every home game effectively to even contemplate doing it. And as well, like I mean, I've seen the designs. I'd be scared of losing that kind of mill atmosphere. And as well, another thing, like what presumably they'd have to shut the ground to redevelop it for a little bit. Where would we play?
Mhm.
That's another thing to put in it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's an interesting point because there's no point in developing the ground in the sense of the capacity. I think I would agree with you there, because if you're not selling out your ground, to make it bigger really doesn't make sense. I think in terms of, if you've got Premier League aspirations, you might need to do some works, perhaps behind the scenes with your, your VAR and your facilities that the Premier League like to have. So I think if we were to see any kind of sort of work done on the Den, I think that would be the way they would go first. I agree with you that
Yeah,
in terms of the actual capacity, there's probably no need to, at this moment in time. And it's only, I mean, we speak about, obviously don't want to keep talking about the season just gone, but we've had 4 or 5 sellouts out of 23.
yeah.
So it probably doesn't warrant. You're probably right there that it doesn't warrant. It doesn't warrant too much of a change right now. Moving away from the ground, I'm going to ask you, and it's really interesting to see what your answer is to this. I think I know, but I'll let you. I'll tell you if I'm right after. In your lifetime, in your time supporting the club, who would you say is the best player that you've seen in a Millwall shirt?
Right. Best would probably have to be Zian. I think he is in terms of the best on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch him play, he does things. I mean, Jed Wallace was brilliant. Me and my cousins actually said to each other last season, I don't think maybe in our lifetime, not for a while, we probably wouldn't see anyone as good as Jed. And I think personally, I think we've found someone better. My favourite
Mm-hmm.
Millwall player is Alan Dunn,
Okay.
because I was a right back when I was younger, so looking up, and he was pretty much a one club man. To me, he epitomised Millwall Football Club. There was one home game where, well, I think it was about January 2011, something like that. I don't know the exact date of it, but I'm sure it will come to mind when I say it. We lost 6-0 home to Birmingham.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and I've read Dunny's book, so I remember reading it about it from his first account. I think we was 4-0 down, and he just said, I just remember they had Zigic up front, and for someone who was 6'8", he just kept falling to the floor. And Dunny was like, I just weren't having it. So I was like, I think Dunny put something like, I might as well give him a reason to put him on the floor after a while. So I think Dunn went straight through him. I think he got a 4-game ban for it. So, but no, he's a Millwall boy. He's someone who I looked at growing up, one club man, and he was generally Mr. Dependable for us. Even when it started going to shit under Holloway, he was always someone you'd look at as someone who would step up and be a leader in that team.
It's interesting, really, because personally, me as an individual, I have a lot of time for Alan Dunn. If for those who I'm not going to spoil it, but if you would like to know why, go to watch my Who Are You, and I'll explain a little bit more. But I do have a lot of time for Alan Dunn, as an individual, and I think for somebody that last at a football club, and I might, this might get fact checked, but I think he was here under 13 managers, and or caretaker managers. For someone to stay under that amount of managers, and for managers not to get rid of him, I think shows just how important he was to the club, and to each of his team. And I think Neil Harris spoke about when it was him that actually released Alan Dunn, and how difficult
Yeah,
it was, because he was a teammate of his. And I
yeah,
just think people speak so highly of him, and I think he's one that goes severely underrated, in a Millwall shirt, because he's
yeah.
not a forward,
It
he's
was
not a winger. He was just, as you say, Mr. Dependable.
Yeah, I remember reading his book. He said he remembers writing it. He said he remembered when Kenny Jackett walked in, and he said he knew Kenny Jackett would be um, a good Millwall manager, because the first thing he said to Alan Dunn was, "Find yourself a new club. I don't want you here." Which is, you wouldn't have seen that
Mm.
coming, because Dunny ended up being. I think that was when he kind of ended up. He was more a right mid, and then gradually under Jackett he moved back to that right back kind of
Yeah.
role. So it was interesting. But yeah, no. So for me, it was Dunny. But there's a couple of honourable mentions in terms of my favourites. Obviously, Neil Harris is one. He was like Neil Harris, Steve Morrison, Robinson, and just for the Blackburn FA Cup game alone, Danny Shitter as well.
Yeah, again, I think, especially with, you tend to find when you ask people these questions, if you're of an older generation, most people are, are touting Teddy, and players like that, and of a younger generation, they're touting Neil Harris and Steve Morrison. It's always the forwards that, of course, they're the people remember the goal scorers, especially as a kid. You remember the person that was scoring goals, but I think Danny Shitter, I think Paul Robinson, Alan Dunn, players like that are so. Millwall. They got Millwall. Even Shitter, who wasn't there for a long time. I think he understood us as a club, and I think
Yeah,
it's
I
interesting.
think did he have two spells shitter in the end? I think he had two.
Possibly,
I could be wrong on there,
possibly,
but I think he had two.
and as you say, that Blackburn, the goal at Blackburn, and I think in the game beforehand as well, he hit a shot from about 40 yards. That
Yeah,
had that have gone in, one of the stands would have
that would have been the
collapsed.
best
Yeah,
goal
it,
ever.
it would have. It was an incredible hit, and again, he was one that not a Millwall fan, not a Millwall boy as some of our players today, but somebody that come in and I know perhaps it might have ended a bit poorly and whatnot towards the end, but he got us and he enjoyed playing for us, and it was quite a nice. He was quite a nice fella as well. If you got the chance to meet him, he
Yeah,
he he always spoke very well to fans. Um, I'll take it. Obviously, as our listeners know, the questions tend to be obviously the same, and we tend to flow quite nicely. But I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball. I'm going to change the order slightly a little bit. You mentioned that Zian Fleming is probably the best player that you've seen play for Millwall. So talking about this current squad, obviously it's going to change because the season has now ended. So we'll base it on who's at the club now. Ziam obviously will be your best, but who do you think is our most important player at the moment in the current squad?
I think it's between two, maybe three if I'm being a bit more generous. I think if I'm being a bit more generous, I'm probably putting Cooper into that
Okay.
bracket just because um, you know. In fact, well, no, you know what? I'm rethinking it a little bit now. I think Cooper and Saville are just that little bit behind Fleming.
Okay.
I think I think what Saville does is brilliant. Don't get me wrong. There's very few players. I mean, even if you look at it just from a Millwall point of view, the fact he's came back to Millwall, I think it's his third or fourth spell with the club now. And
Mm.
he's always served us well. And we've got a very different Saville now to the one that we sold in 2018.
I think,
Very,
yeah, I think you're right there. I think Saville is someone, again, Zian Fleming is the attacker. It's the player that it's for the reason why he won Player of the Season because he scored the goals. But it's the players like Cooper and Saville that Cooper's played 300 games. Saville's in his third spell with the club, so he's probably racking up a fair few appearances. The Zian Flemings and the Jed Wallaces come and go, and they will, and we have to accept that. But there's the stalwarts, the players that get the club, as you say, that I think make them who they are.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think Saville is a very very good player, and he definitely gets us. But if he was, let's say we started next season and he was to get injured, for me, I think we've got Leonard who can do like a very good job in there as well. So but I think Saville, I was actually a little bit surprised he didn't win Player of the Year, just because of the usual Millwall kind of way of voting. It's usually a defender or a
Yeah,
midfielder.
it's funny that you say that because I think there's a lot of people that were quite surprised at Saville not winning the Player of the Season. But as you say, I think Millwall fans have a lot of respect for, as you touched on. Alan Dunn was your favourite player. The players that maybe do go a little bit under the radar, the ones that don't necessarily maybe get the man of the matches or in the team of the week, but the ones that do the hard graft in the background. And I think that's what makes us such a unique club as well. It's obviously we want star, but everybody wants a star player. Everybody wants to find a Haaland or a Messi or whatever. But sometimes at Millwall, you do have to have the grafters, and they certainly fall into that category. An interesting question now coming up because if my memory serves me well, you haven't got many to choose from, and I've got a feeling you're not going to choose one particular individual. But who would you say is probably your favourite Millwall manager?
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. We have actually had a bit of
Mm.
stability since I've been manager. Um, if Mondays was slightly different, it probably would have been a very simple two-word answer. But I can't give it
Mm.
to Gary Rowett now. He would have taken us to a new high that I haven't seen in my
Mm.
lifetime. I know early 2000s, when just before I was born, and kind of around the time I was born, we had the FA Cup run. We had the playoffs in 01-02 where we lost to Birmingham. And obviously, and in the season, the FA Cup run happened as well. Again, I'm going to reference Danny's book here again, but he said he didn't. He thought if we hadn't made the FA Cup final that season, he thinks we would have gone on to get promoted
Mm.
that season. So, but I can't say Gary Rowett just because he hasn't taken us to that next level, which I thought he could have done. So, looking back in my lifetime, I'm not going to pick Ian
Yeah.
Holloway and I'm not going to pick Steve Lomas. So I'm almost down to two by default. I'm down to Kenny Jackett and
Mm.
Neil Harris almost by default. Um, I'm going to go for Neil um, for a couple of reasons. One, it was his first job in management when he came to us. I think he was always probably going to get a bit more of a free pass with us than he maybe would at
Yeah.
any other team.
Yeah.
Um, but he inherited a right mess of a squad,
Mm.
really, didn't he? Being Holloway's, kind of, oh no, we didn't win this week. Let's sign like Angel Martinez on like a 1 month loan and just see what happens there. So I think Neil Harris, and as well, we finished eighth this season. Let's not forget Neil Harris's best championship finish with us was eighth as well. So if you almost look at it from that point, I wouldn't say he is on a level playing field with Gary Rowett as a manager, but he's equalled his best achievement with us.
Mm.
So for me, you know, um, Kenny Jackett as well, did an unbelievable job for us, but I did think when Kenny left, it was the right timing. I do think, the road had just ran out for him. But that's not to say what a brilliant job he did
And
for
again,
us.
it's just with managers, there's like a cycle, isn't there? And it happens. It happens at the very top of world football. For a Mourinho, for example, was so good for so long. He's still a good manager, but he's not the Mourinho of 20 years ago. That Alex Ferguson towards the end wasn't getting the best out of the Man United players. So at every level it happens. And I think Jackett, you're right. I think he'd run his race. There was no more for him to achieve. Harris probably again, fantastic what he did. Got us into the Championship after the Holloway years, and again it got to the point where he probably just couldn't take us any further. And it's interesting you mentioned Rowett and the fact that he's equalled Harris's best place. Is he at the end of his tenure as Millwall manager? I don't know. That will be sort of decided perhaps over the next couple of months. But he will
Yeah,
eventually get to a point where he will say, and we all know it's coming, that he can't take us any further. And I think as a club like ours, you kind of have to take the good times. And Jackett and Harris achieved big things during theirs before their end of the road. Little bit of a turn on now, a little bit of a twist on this, and I love these questions because it's always interesting. Every time you watch Millwall play, I'm pretty sure you're like myself and most of our fans. You want every single player to do well. You support them, but we have had some shockers that have put on a Millwall shirt over the years. So I'll ask for one. There might be a couple because there usually is, but who would you say is the worst player you've seen in a Millwall shirt?
yeah. There's a few. I've seen the who's the worst striker tweet. I think that's been
Mm,
doing the rounds recently, and some people put Tom Elliott in there, which I thought was
yeah.
unbelievably harsh. I don't even think even in my lifetime he's in the top 10. I mean, I just had a quick note of that. The first two that sprung to mind were the Hoff. Aside from that Middlesbrough away game where he scored them two goals, which arguably kept us up that season, didn't really do much. Bit like a lamppost, really. Um, and then someone of a completely different build to him, and Gary Taylor Fletcher. I mean, kind of says
Mm,
it all, really. That one, didn't
yeah.
it? That signing. Um, Rob Hulse and Danny and Gesson also probably need a mention in that kind of bracket. But we've had so many bad strikers. I actually didn't want to pick a striker for this one, so I've actually gone with. I think he played about 2 or 3 games for us in about 2010. So you've probably got to have a good memory to remember this bloke. He's called Berthel Askew. Um, he came in from Norwich on loan, and it was the first ever away game I went to with my dad. I think he came on as a sub. It was Leicester away. We lost 4-2. He came on as a sub, and within about 20 minutes, he just went straight through. I think it was Yakubu. He just put him straight on the floor with like an awful tackle, and was like, well, he got sent off. And I think we saw him once again after that, and he was just yeah, I think I had to put him just because I was there as well at that Leicester game. It
I
made it
love that
worse.
you've given an answer that's so quite obscure, and I'm pretty sure that there'll be people that will listen to going, "Oh, I don't know that." I'm gonna have to, and they will look it up, which is great. So if you were at that Leicester game and you remember it, when you come to watch this, drop a comment, and we'll see if anybody has as good a memory as you. I'll be honest with you, I don't remember him, so I am going to be one of those that go and look him up at the end of this video. But yeah, if you were there, put a comment in, and if you remember him. And again, another interesting one. Obviously, I don't particularly care too much about the oppositions that come to us. I want us to win. You know, star players, you always do. You've had your, like for example, this year, your Guy Carez, your Tellers. You know the star players. Years gone by, you've had Tarat, you've had Wes Hoolahan, but we also come up against some pretty bad players. Any players that stand out as sort of the worst player you've seen play against us or have shockers against us?
Yeah, it's like you mentioned, isn't it? Like you don't really try and pay too much attention. I almost had to think back to like what was the easiest win I've ever seen Millwall get, and almost try and remember. So I've gone with we played Blackpool at home 2018, I think, something like that. It was a League One game, but this is when Blackpool were on
Mm,
their demise. So I did feel a bit bad for them at the time, but that they were still putting out a team. So we can only beat what's in front of us on
mm,
the day, can't we? But they had a right back called Hayden White, and we had Jed Wallace and Shane Ferguson on the wings, and he just had an absolutely torrid afternoon. I think he got sent off with about 15 minutes to go, and I think that was, he just every single time we got the ball straight down that wing, straight past him. He was really, really poor, and he was probably massively out of his depth because I think now I think he's playing for Walsall now, and he's obviously going to be a bit older now. So he's either really highly rated when he was younger, or just absolutely desperate that Blackpool was about
mm.
the only team that would probably take
I
him on.
actually think that was Jed Wallace's first goal. I think he scored a free kick. Um, it
Terrible free kick,
it went
straight through the
along the
wall.
ground, didn't it? Yeah, yeah. It
Yeah,
was. I vaguely remember that, and I remember them having one sent off. But yeah, again, you don't. I don't pay too much attention to as I say, the better players. I think there's a lot more focus on the
yeah.
championship now than what there was perhaps 10, 15 years ago. So everybody knows everyone. They know the better players and stuff like that. Coming on to games now, obviously you touched on earlier that you had a couple that you were going to mention. There might be a crossover in some of these, so feel free to give two or three answers if needed. Most memorable match involving Millwall.
Well, firstly, I'm going to have to say Blackburn for the wrong reasons. Um, the absolute elation when that Ollie Burt goal went in was untouched. It's probably one of the best celebrations I can remember down Millwall for a long time, just for it to, you know, go
Mm,
so flat so quickly as well. So, and to come so close, that's why I've got to put it in there as well, as a memorable one for the wrong reasons. For the right reasons, two games, both home games, both FA Cup games. The first one is Leicester, um, 10 men against, I've said this to my mates actually, it was probably a little bit unlucky that we beat the Premier League champions at home, and out of every single Premier League champion we ended up beating, it was probably the worst
mm,
team, arguably. Which I know is a bit harsh on Leicester because they did just win the league. But if you say you beat the Premier League champions at home in an FA Cup game, you expecting someone to turn around and go, "Oh, what, you beat Man City or
mm.
Chelsea or
Yeah,
United or whatever." So, you know, but it was a great day. 90th minute as well. That was brilliant. I remember sharing that moment with my granddad, which was quite a nice moment for
yeah,
me to share with
absolutely.
him. The youngest generation with the oldest generation in our family, which was quite nice. And then the second FA Cup game is
Hmm.
Everton game. When I think of like a proper Millwall atmosphere and Millwall like scenario, that was it. The pissing down rain. It was absolutely horrible in there
Mm.
that night. Um, you know, and the little bit of shithousery as well with Cooper's equaliser. But that was brilliant. That was
It's really funny you say that because we as I say, a couple of us went to the end of season awards the other night, and we had Murray Wallace on our table, and he was talking very fondly of the Everton game and very fondly of Cooper's. he said the ball hit him here. It wasn't handball, and it was kind of like, come on, we all know what it was. It's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to. You're not trying to con the ref. But
Yeah,
as you say, everything about both of those games for different reasons. I think Leicester, we obviously were under the cosh. They had a few more chances. We were down to 10 men, but it was a real
yeah.
gritty, determined performance. Whereas,
Probably the best performance Jordan
yeah,
Archer's ever had in
he,
his career as well. Considering did he pull his groin in like the second minute kicking the ball as well? Because I don't think he played for a while
yeah, and
after that.
it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible, and the fact that the dogged defence and Nick won sort of underdog spirit. Whereas I think the Everton game was more. I think whilst they took the lead twice, we sort of gave it to them. We got stuck in. They were
Yeah,
fragile, and it was more of a we're going to come at you and we're going to try and win the game. I think Lee Gregory's goal in that game goes severely underrated because of what happened. Because that header was
yeah,
phenomenal, a phenomenal
yeah,
finish, and obviously Coops. It was handball. There's no getting around it. It was handball,
yeah.
and then Murray Wallace at the end. Again, in recent times, those kind of games and the atmospheres, as you say, like you don't forget them. You just don't forget them. You leave the
No,
even. I mean, I know again we talk about the Blackburn game, but at half time, that those atmospheres you don't forget because you're just so caught up in it. Obviously, we'll hope to forget Blackburn sooner rather than later.
yeah, that'd be
We won't be
nice, wouldn't
talking
it?
about that in a few years' time. We'll still be talking about Everton. So,
Yeah,
um, and what would you say? I mean, obviously those were two big games. Murray Wallace's goal was a great moment. Sean Cummings' goal was a great moment. Either of those your favourite ever Millwall moment, or anything else that tops that?
yeah. I would have to go the Murray Wallace goal just because I remember my mate came with me that day. My dad couldn't come, so one of my mates came with me, and we got given the free kick, and we got both our goals from set pieces already that game. And I turned around to my mate and said, "Here we go, this is it." And he was like, "What you reckon we score?" And I was like, "I don't know." I was like, "Bloody hope so. We've got to go to Liverpool in midweek." And then I was like, Williams whipped it in. I remember it. I remember turning to him. I was like, "This year I've got to go to Liverpool in midweek." And there was that split second where that ball landed at Murray
Mm.
Wallace's feet, and I just saw it. I just shouted, "Or is it?" It was like one of them like life like flashing
Yeah.
before your eyes moments. Like I almost couldn't believe that because it literally just fell to him, and like within a second it was in
Mm.
the back of the net, and I was like, "Oh my!" Like I've just
It's
wow.
fun. It's
Yeah,
funny
that
you
was
say that because even when you watch it back now, I remember it live. Obviously, watching it back, time stops for a split second. It's
yeah,
just like it's almost as if it's stuck. The ball just stuck to the ground, and he's just waiting for someone, either one of theirs, to kick it or Wallace to kick it, and then it didn't go quiet in the ground. It never goes dead quiet, especially when we're attacking. But it
no,
felt like it did, and then all of a sudden everyone's up and going
yeah.
nuts.
It's
It's just great.
it's the Cummings video as well. There's a video. I'll encourage any Millwall fan who's watching this. Go and put in to your YouTube search bar when you finish watching this one. Go and put in Millwall fans enjoy. If you haven't seen it, there's a video from the Leicester end of the
Mm.
Cummings goal when
Hmm.
it goes in and the celebrations. And there's that, like we just mentioned, there's that split second where like Gregory slips it through to him, and you just hear all the seats like rattle when everyone stands up. It's just like one of them magic moments that
It's also
gives
that
you.
video as well. If you go to watch it after, you almost hear like a gasp as well. It's the seats rattling and the like because you think, oh my god, this is it, and then obviously Cummins scores
Yeah,
and Sean Cummins as well. By the way, was someone he was all right. He did a job. He was a okay right back.
yeah,
He will forever be a Millwall folklore. Forever. It's not like your Morrisons and Harrises who everybody knows and loves, but Sean Cummins, the right back that scored that goal, it'll always be forever remembered. Off camera, you needed a bit of time to think about this. But your best
yeah.
story following Millwall.
Well, the funniest moment was Fulham away, the one where we won 1-0 after 2 games. We was top of the
Right.
league. I think we all got a bit carried away, but I just remember that there was that couple, weren't they? I don't know if
Mm.
you was there that day. You've
Hmm.
probably seen the photos of that couple walking through
Yeah,
the park, and me and my dad walked straight past them. We just turned to each other and we were like, that's just not going
No.
to end well, is it? And then sure enough, next thing you know, you see everyone running right around it, ruining all the photos and everything. I think they actually quite enjoyed it. I think they sort of took it in a good spirit, to be fair to them. But me and my dad, it was just the way me and my dad turned to each other. It was just like, that's just not going to end well. They probably should have planned that
There's
one a bit better.
certain things that happen when you follow it, especially when you follow a club like Millwall, when you are with lots of supporters, because we usually take a good crowd to Fulham, so there's always a good following,
Yeah,
and certain things you just think, as you say, that's not good. It's not good. I think they had no choice but to take it well, because they were going to do it anyway. The supporters were going to do it anyway,
yeah,
so they had no choice but to just kind of get involved and laugh along with it. Although I would imagine that they probably went um, back to the park and probably took those photos on another occasion where there wasn't
yeah, maybe when it was slightly
yeah
quieter.
thousands.
Yeah, that was a good moment. Yeah, that was one of my first. That was my second away game, I think. So that's one that always sticks with me. The first away game I'd seen us win as well. So that's probably why that one sticks with
Absolutely.
me,
And
I
and
think.
then let's say your best story.
I think that was the. I think we got a bit confused. I'd say that was probably
Right.
the best. Um, funniest ones. There was Sheffield Wednesday at home in 2018. It was really, really rainy, kind of wet, horrible night, and one of the advertising awnings blew onto
Mm.
the pitch.
Yeah, I remember
And the steward tried to run on. Yeah, he tried to run on, and he made right
mm.
old meal of it, didn't he? I think it's best left at that. So, yeah, that was a good moment. Another one, this one's a bit more personal to me. So there was one time, when was the 2-2 draw with QPR, when Harry Redknapp had the ball in his face and then we had it in the net 30
That was
seconds
under
later?
Holloway, I think. I think that was the
Yeah,
year he kept us up when he first come in.
yeah. Was that
2014,
about 2014? About then?
15, or roughly, yeah, roughly.
About then. So yeah, I was supposed to be ball boy that day. So I don't know if anyone's ever been ball boy or their kids ever been ball boy. So they tell you to get to the ground for roughly about kind of 1 quarter past 1, because they want you out in place of the warm ups, and you have to have the list of rules read to you,
Mm.
whatever. And so anyway, so me and my dad, we left, and my dad was like, we'll make. It wasn't the first time I've been ball boy, so my dad was like, right, well, if we leave here, if we get the train from here at about 11:30, we'll get to the ground at 12:30, plenty of time. And it's like, everything will be fine. The trains are never
Mm.
delayed. No, there was a massive line-side fire when I was trying to get the train in that day, and I nearly. I mean, I was trying to get to the ground for 1 o'clock. I think I even missed the first 5 minutes. That's how bad it
Mm.
was that day. Um, the ball boy bloke was very nice. He was like, I'll make sure I get you back in for another game, which was, very nice of him. But it's just like one of them where it's kind of like sticks in your mind. I was like, oh god, I've let the club down. I've let everyone down here. I've like bloody trains. It's like, yeah, no. But so that one's a funny moment. I can look back at it now and laugh, but I certainly wasn't laughing
No, there's
on the
certain
day.
there's certain times as well. I remember going to games with my dad or friends or whatever, and you sort of plan it. You get there nice and early, or you park up, or you get the train. You might go for a drink, get some food, whatever. But there's times where we've got there and you've just missed kickoff or something, and you sort of panicking because the time's getting on. Especially in that scenario, that they're waiting for you or expecting you to be there, and you're probably thinking, and
Yeah,
well, to be fair to Millwall, with stuff like that with the kids, they do a lot of good stuff. They do look after the little ones pretty well. So I'm sure. Did you get to go
yeah,
be a ball boy again after? Did they actually cook? Yeah,
yeah. They had me
there you
back a
go. So
couple of
you didn't
times. Yeah,
you haven't
so.
got a black mark next to your name at the ground. They're
No,
still
I've outgrown it now, but yeah, no, they didn't. No, they didn't hold anything against me, which was
and
quite good.
obviously I think you touched on Fulham away as obviously the first away day that you saw us win. Best away day?
That's certainly up there, just because it's the first one I've seen us win, and up until this season, it was the only one I'd seen us win. So by process of elimination, it almost has to be in there for me. Um, and then I've seen us win a couple of times away. I've seen Bristol City, QPR, and Reading this season. QPR was a really
Yeah.
good day actually, and as well actually QPR last season, the first game back. I actually mentioned in the last pod I did with Mickey and Ben. I ended up getting COVID after that one, so I think I put it down, but it was the first day back, first game back. Sorry, so that was a really good one. QPR this season was good. I think because it was because Leicester was the first one I went to and Fulham was the first one I saw us win. I think them two are the most memorable ones. They'll be the ones I look back in kind of 10 years time and go, yeah, I remember them, and probably the QPR last season especially when Jed scored as
Absolutely.
well. That was a special moment. So they'll be the two ones. I don't think I mean, I might look back in 10 years' time for playing QPR away in 10 years' time. I think here we are for like the 10th season in a row. I might think back to the one time we've ever won there, which was last season.
Yeah, I mean, I was there. I was at QPR this year. I did a few of the aways this year myself, and that was a cracking day. The atmosphere from our end was absolutely superb. I thought.
Yeah,
I've always enjoyed going to QPR. Some people don't, but I've actually always enjoyed. I mean, when I've been, we tend to draw a lot when I go there. So as I say, and obviously we've not won there up until this season for a long time, but
yeah,
most of the time that I'd gone, I don't think I'd seen us lose. It's just that we kept drawing, and there was a few years ago. I'm not sure if you may have got. It actually was under Holloway. It was the year we stayed up under Holloway, and Scott Malone scored right at the end, right in front of us.
I wasn't
And
there, but I remember I've seen the
oh,
video of the
it was incredible.
celebrations.
I don't think I've ever. I mean, we've scored at Wembley and we've scored big goals, throughout the years. I don't think I've ever seen any
Yeah,
people around me and myself celebrate a goal. So I have fond memories of QPR, of myself, and obviously Jed's
yeah,
goal was huge after COVID. I think the players really. The players will. I think the players will remember that. Any Millwall player that was playing in that game, the first game after COVID, will never forget the
yeah.
moment that Jed Wallace scored that goal, because the supporters were absolutely fantastic, fantastic that day. Going to talk about some rivals, as we always do. These answers tend to be quite bog standard, so um, feel free to pick the same ones as our other guest, or if you've got any out there that you really don't
Yeah.
like, then that's absolutely fine. Who would you say, first of all, is your most disliked opponent? It can be a team that you don't like, or it can be whenever you see the fixture, you think, "Oh, we never beat them," or how, or whatever you may feel.
Well, I think get the obvious one out
Mm.
there, West Ham. But then if I want to, say another one, I always think of it's always Barnsley.
Hmm.
I hate playing Barnsley. They are one of our
Yeah,
bogey teams, aren't they? I think I can only ever recall us beating them once. I think the bet when we won
the
2-0
the Ben Marshall
there,
goal.
the Ben
Mm.
Marshall goal. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there that day. But and obviously, Wembley kind of puts the seal on it,
Mm.
everything. But like, so rare. Actually, yeah, there was not, yeah, well, not the season just gone. The season before that, we won 1-0 there, didn't we? Murray Wallace, 90th
Yeah,
minute header. Um, so they, yeah, but Barnsley's just like a team we never. I always feel like we never beat them.
they are a team,
And
aren't they? They are the one for me where I would say you look at the fixtures and you see that coming up and you just go, oh, like, here we
yeah,
go. They come into the den. You know what's going to happen. You know what's coming, and you
yeah,
almost can predict it. In
it was Rotherham, but I feel like we've turned a slight corner against
a
Rotherham
little
recently.
bit, Yeah, they do probably from the
Then they aren't as
no,
bad as Barnsley. I think it's the Wembley thing. I'll never probably get over the Wembley thing
no,
for
and
Barnsley.
especially
Um,
as I think with that as well. I think they score one of their players. I think it might have been Hurahan, scored an absolute weldy.
Adam
Was it
Hamill,
Hamill?
that was
Yeah,
the second goal.
at that point you just thought, oh, they've done it again, like that.
Yeah,
Barnsley, and but yeah, they're always one that do that. You sort of, I can't stand playing them, to be honest. I don't. I think they're in the League One playoff. I think they did make the top six,
they are
so
at
I'm
the playoffs.
hoping.
Yeah, I'm rooting for whoever they're
Yeah,
playing. I'm rooting for them.
anyone else.
I think they're playing Bolton, which I think is even further than Barnsley. But
Yeah,
I'll
I
be
don't
rooting
mind the
for Bolton
travel. We'll
anyway.
travel there. It just means we don't have to go back to Barnsley. And obviously, the top three rivals you touched on, West Ham, Barnsley are obviously not necessarily a rival. It's just a bit of a bogey team.
No,
So two more to join West Ham.
I'll put
Hmm.
Leeds in there. I won't hesitate with my top three. For me, the top three is one West Ham, two Crystal Palace, three
Hmm.
Leeds. That's the top three for me. I get some people might put an argument in there for Charlton, but I just see him more as like an annoying little brother.
It's
Like,
interesting, really, and this is a really cool thing to say, but also it's going to make some of our listeners feel really old. You are a supporter that have never seen Charlton beat us, if I'm right, based on your
yeah,
age, because I think it was in '94 or '95 that
yeah,
they did. So I mean, obviously growing up and having family in the area, I'm sure you must have mates or have come across people that support Charlton. So
yeah.
you've never ever seen us lose to Charlton, which is quite cool. But as I say, I don't see them. They're the most local team, perhaps, but again,
They're in the top five, but the top three is
yeah,
untouched.
I would agree, especially
I'd probably put them fourth, actually, to be
in your
honest.
lifetime, my lifetime as well, to a certain extent. I think out of those teams, we've played Leeds more than any of them. So for me, they have to be in
Yeah,
there because it's just we've played them a lot more than perhaps the others. But
couple of great games
yeah,
against them as well.
yeah,
Saying that,
it,
not even just obviously the 4-3 jumps out, doesn't it? But they don't like coming down to our place. It's very rare they even get a point down at the
but
Pen.
again, at the same time, though, we don't particularly like going there. We've had a couple,
No,
as I say, the 4-3. Obviously, Jimmy Abdu's the 1-1. Jimmy Abdu's
yeah,
goal was great, but no, Leeds are always they'll always be there for me because when I was a kid growing up,
yeah,
Sky just put Leeds on every week. So much probably like yourself,
yeah.
you probably saw that Leeds were on telly, Leeds this, Leeds that, and fingers crossed that we get them back down. That might be the only saving
Oh, that'd
grace
be
of
nice.
not going up this year.
Yeah, I've got one of my mates, and I had it saved on my phone for last year, and it didn't pay off, but I haven't deleted it because I knew they'd struggle again this year. It's the Have You Missed Us banner,
Yeah.
so I'm waiting to send that to him. Hopefully, come the end of this month
And
again.
as it's going with a couple of results at the weekend, they're in big trouble, Leeds. So let's hope.
Yeah, but it'd be nice if Leicester are listening, on the very slim chance they are. If any Leicester players or fans are listening, if you want to up your game a little bit, lads, and get Everton down, that'd be
Yeah,
fantastic as well.
that would be great. But again, I think they might have the win. We're beating Brighton, giving them a little bit of a boost. Might have just helped them. But I'll take Leeds if we get them.
Yeah,
I'll be more than happy. Um,
yeah.
Coming away from rivals, a couple of more questions to go, and we'll bring it back obviously to Millwall. If you could change anything about the club, whether it be past, whether it be you're not allowed to say Blackburn on Monday, so we because we all would change that. If you could change anything
Yeah.
other than that, would you? Is there anything that you would?
My lads say Jules Long, or is that too similar to
It-
to Blackburn on Monday?
Um, you go on. You can.
Sorry, but scary thing is, I wouldn't say scary, but he isn't the worst goalkeeper I've actually probably seen us have. You know, well, I mean, Dave Martin may not have been as bad, but I always hate
Mm,
him more for the Brighton thing and then moving straight to West Ham at the end of the season. It's just
mm.
how it is. Um, so yeah, I don't think I would change much else because we're a very special football club. There's no other football club that compares. I've, I've I've been to a few more where I've been away of work and I've been with mates and stuff, and nothing compares.
No, and I think it's always interesting, isn't it? When if you've got a group of mates that support different teams. Like I've been to a couple. A very good friend of mine supports is an Ebbsfleet fan, so obviously only up the road, we live in Kent as well. And I don't mind going if Millwall are not playing. Like, I won't. I would never go. I would never choose to
Yeah,
go over them. I mean, I'd go to the odd game, but and I enjoy going to watch the football, and it's great when they score and this, that, and the other. But it's not the same as your own team. I don't say I have a second team.
no,
I would never say I have a second team because I don't. So I don't care enough about the results to warrant it. But you're right. We are a special club, and I think it's
yeah,
refreshing because everyone always gives an answer that they would change something. So it's quite nice to hear someone say no.
no. Yeah, it's a bit. I don't have a second team, but I'm in Kent. I'd quite like to see. I live quite close to like Tunbridge Wells, so it's. I don't necessarily look out for their results, but it's nice to see Tunbridge Angels and Maidstone United
Mm-hmm.
doing well, just because local teams is just nice. On the off chance I do go to one of them, Maidstone were in the National League last season, so they're playing a couple of big teams. So it's always better to go down there because you don't want to like when they're playing teams like Weymouth and stuff like that. It's like sometimes you know particularly with Tunbridge, there's like 1,000 people there, probably not even that if you're playing a team like Weymouth. Whereas if you're playing like Maidstone playing like Notts County, I think there was almost 1,000 Notts fans there, which is good for the club and good for the area. I think it's probably a bit too much of a stretch to say I'd like to see Gillingham do well. I know they've got Harris, and my best mate supports Gillingham as well, but I think it's just too much of a stretch. So I'd like to see him do well.
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it, where you don't want them to, but if Harris is doing well, you're pleased for him, not the club. You're happy to see
Yeah.
Harris. Maybe they can start doing really, really well. Someone needs a manager. Harris then leaves Gillingham, and then we can cut ties a little bit. All time, or since you've been supporting the club, favourite shirt? Millwall shirt.
So this is like one that's quite unique to me. It's I can't even think what year it is now. We had Euro ferries on the front, the relegation season. There's one reason and one reason only why it's my favourite shirt, and it's sitting in my drawer in my room right now. It's because I was mascot that season.
Right.
So I got to walk out. I think this is, again, I didn't want to say it when I was speaking about Alan Dunn earlier, but he was the captain that day. I got to walk out with him and meet all the players, and I've got photos with that shirt on. So I think, to me, that shirt will always hold a special place in my heart. So it's probably my favourite. But I did quite like the green and white away kit we had. That was quite nice as well. If I'm trying to pick one based not on nostalgia, the green and white away kit was quite.
I think it's nice. And I think it's nice to have a story, though, to go along a kit, because a lot of people, we're a football club that we're not mad on kits and shirts and replica. Like, for example, funny enough, I had this conversation today about, I have the training top from this year, the team, a little 7-a-side team that I play and playing black. So I've got the black training kit, but I wouldn't wear it out and about. Yeah. But to have a story that means something to you and have the shirt, and I'm sure you've got the pictures, and you'll have those for forever, and you'll be able to look back perhaps when you've got kids of your own. Yeah. Oh, look, I did it in there, and you've got the shirt to go with it, which is
exactly
quite nice. And that leads me on to, it might be, it might not be, but the best piece of Millwall memorabilia that you
own. So for me, yes, that's the best piece I own. But so in my family, when my granddad used to take my dad and my uncle, there was one time where there was a road sign of Zampa Road. It was just left lying like in a scrapyard, like near the ground. I think this was at the old ground. And my granddad said to my dad, "Go over and climb and get it, and we'll take it home." And my dad was like, "No, I'm not doing that." My uncle was like, "I'll go on, then I'll do it." So he climbed over and got it. So it's actually got SE15 on rather than SE16. But no, he's got that in his back garden now, which is quite a niche little bit of memorabilia. So I quite like that one. Granddad also had a little bit of turf from the old den, but he left at his old house when he moved. So
that's a shame. I think there's a lot of people out there that that you can see pictures now of people digging up the ground. You even get them at grounds today that people still do that. So it's a shame that obviously you didn't have that. But again, with memorabilia, I think, again, as a football club, we are like the supporters. Having shirts and things, nothing against it, nothing wrong with it. I've got lots of shirts that I've kept from over the years since I was a kid, and I probably will keep growing up. But a lot of people don't have it, so it's nice that you've got those memories. You've got, obviously, sort of about your family having a sign and stuff. Well, that is the final question. As I said at the top of the show, Dan is going to be joining, or has joined, that Millwall podcast. He's one of us now. He's in the group chat, and that's it. You're cemented now as one of the panelists. So, Dan, it's been really cool to get your story. Obviously, the guys will hear a lot more from you over the coming months and next season. Any final thoughts to say?
No, I'm just as Stephen said, I'm joining the panel now. I'm looking forward to adding to the already top content that the podcast produces, and hoping to enhance and add to it more by bringing my hopefully brilliant analysis and insight into it. But no, so hopefully none of you get bored of hearing my voice after a
It's
while.
really interesting, Dan, and obviously for our listeners as well, that you are, because obviously of your age, it's going to be really fun when you do shows with us, because we always like to have a little bit of a dig with Mickey that a couple of us are a bit younger than him, so you even top some of us. So we will be using that, and when he comes back to edit this, I'm sure one of us will get a text or a phone call off of him, so he'll love that. But that's been Who Are You with Dan. As I say, Dan, get used to him, get used to his face, get used to his voice, because you're going to be hearing a lot more from him. However, this is the final Who Are You of the season. We brought this back, and we've had one continuously now for the last few months, but obviously with the season coming to an end, and obviously with our new panelist, we thought it'd be nice to end with his show. So when you're watching this, unfortunately, this will be the last one, only for a little while. They will be coming back in the new year. We've got lots of big things planned, hence why we've got Dan on board, and you might see a couple more faces over the summer. Not just transfers for Millwall, but incomings for the podcast as well. So we hopefully you've enjoyed the content on this. Hopefully, obviously, Chat with Chaps has been fantastic. If you haven't seen some of those, I know it's really difficult with perhaps to listen back to about the Blackburn game, but his review on that was absolutely superb, and one of the best ones you'll probably listen to if you choose to. There'll be videos going out over the summer as always. Follow us across socials, obviously for ourselves. If you'd like to follow us, come and chat with us. Obviously, our Twitter handles, mine and Dan's, are on the screen. We're more than happy to talk to fans and perhaps talk about getting you on the show. That's been the Millwall podcast. Who Are You? The final one for 22-23 season. We'll see you all very soon, and thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe.